The rain didn't just fall that night, it punished. It hammered against the roof of the Thorne estate like 1,000 angry fists demanding to be let in. Thomas Thorne sat in his leather armchair. He held a glass of scotch. He hadn't touched in an hour. The fireplace was roaring, but Thomas felt cold. He always felt cold. He was 42 years old. He had 3 commas in his bank account. He had a company that employed 10,000 people, and he had absolutely no one to share it with. He told himself he liked it this way. People were liabilities, attachments were weaknesses. That was the philosophy that had built Thorne Industries. He was about to take a sip when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the thunder. It was a cry, thin, high-pitched, desperate. Thomas froze. He lived on 50 acres of gated land in upstate New York. No one got in without a code. No one got in without an appointment. He set the glass down. He walked to the heavy oak front doors. He unlocked the deadbolt. He threw them open. The wind lashed at his face. The rain soaked his silk shirt instantly. He looked out into the darkness, nothing, just the storm. He was about to close the door, convinced the silence of the house was finally driving him mad. Then he looked down there, sitting on the welcome mat, a wicker basket, and inside, wrapped in a blanket that was soaked through, was a baby. The infant was blue, shaking, screaming with a strength that seemed impossible for something so small. Thomas stared. His first instinct wasn't compassion. It was anger. Who would do this? Who would dare leave their problem on his doorstep? He reached for his phone to call security, to call the police, to have this thing removed. But then the lightning flashed. For a split second, the porch was lit up like noon, and the baby opened its eyes. They were dark, stormy, and they locked right onto Thomas. The baby reached out a tiny, frozen hand, and Thomas Thorne, the man who was known on Wall Street as the iceberg, felt something crack in his chest. He didn't make the call. He bent down. His knees popped. He scooped up the basket. He stepped back inside and kicked the door shut, locking the storm out. He brought the basket to the fire. He pulled the wet blankets away. It was a boy, maybe 2 weeks old. There was a piece of paper pinned to the onesie. Thomas grabbed it. He unfolded it, looking for a name, an explanation, a plea for money. But the rain had done its work. The ink had bled. The paper was a soggy mess of blue stains, unreadable. There was no name, no return address, just a baby and a billionaire who didn't know the first thing about life. Thomas looked at the boy. The boy stopped crying. He just hiccuped, soaking in the warmth of the fire. "You chose the wrong house, kid. I'm not a father." But as the baby's hand wrapped around his pinky finger, holding on like he was the only solid thing in the universe, Thomas knew he was lying. He didn't know it yet, but the universe hadn't made a mistake. It was setting a trap, and it would take 20 years for the steel jaws to snap shut. 20 years is a long time, long enough to build a skyscraper, long enough to lose a fortune, long enough to raise a son you never planned to have. Thomas named him Leo. He gave Leo everything money could buy, the best private schools in Manhattan, piano lessons with concert masters, summers in the Hamptons. But there was one thing Thomas didn't give him, himself. Thomas kept a wall up, a wall made of expectations, cold distance. He told himself it was for Leo's own good. The world was a shark tank. Leo needed to be tough, but Leo wasn't tough. Leo was soft. He didn't care about stock prices. He cared about the stray cat behind the garage. He didn't want to study economics. He wanted to paint, and this drove Thomas crazy. It was a Tuesday evening in November. The dining room table was 20 feet long. Thomas sat at one end. Leo sat at the other. The silence between them was louder than the clinking of silverware. Leo was 20 now. He had the same dark eyes as the baby on the porch. But now they were filled with a quiet sadness. "I saw the tuition bill. You dropped the business management class, and you picked up. What is it? Art history. I hate business, Dad. I'm not good at it. I don't want to run the company. It's not about what you want, Leo. It's about legacy. I gave you a life most people dream of. I took you in when no one else wanted you, and this is how you repay me. By finger painting." The words hung in the air, cruel, sharp. "I never asked you to take me in, and maybe I would have been better off if you hadn't." Leo threw his napkin on the table and walked out. Thomas watched him go. He felt that familiar crack in his chest. The one he felt 20 years ago. He wanted to call him back. He wanted to say he was sorry. But Thomas Thorne didn't apologize. He poured himself another glass of wine and sat in the empty room. He thought he was teaching his son a lesson about strength. But life has a funny way of grading its own tests. The next morning, Thomas didn't go to the office. He couldn't. He tried to get out of bed, and his legs gave way. He hit the floor with a thud. His chest felt like it was being crushed by a hydraulic press. He gasped for air, but his lungs wouldn't fill. He managed to crawl to the nightstand. He knocked the lamp over. He found his phone. He dialed 911, then everything went black. The hospital room smelled like bleach and pine cleaner, the kind of smell that tries to cover up the scent of death, but only makes it more obvious. Thomas woke up to the sound of beeping, consistent, rhythmic, annoying. He opened his eyes. Leo was there. He was sitting in the plastic chair in the corner. He was wearing his paint-splattered jeans and a hoodie. He looked tired. "You're awake." Thomas tried to sit up. A sharp pain shot through his side. "What happened? Your kidneys, Dad. They're failing. I'm fine. I run 3 miles a day. It's genetic, apparently. The doctor said it's a rare condition, polycystic kidney disease. It's been happening for years. But you never went to the doctor." Thomas stared at the ceiling tiles. Genetic. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had spent his life believing he was a self-made man, that he controlled his own destiny, and now his own DNA was betraying him. "So fix it. Buy a new one. I have the money." "It doesn't work like that. The waiting list is 5 years. You don't have 5 years. You have, maybe 5 weeks. The silence returned. Heavier this time. 5 weeks. Thomas Thorne, master of the universe, had a month to live, unless what? Unless you have a living donor, someone who is a match." Thomas laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "I don't have any family, Leo. You know that. My parents are dead. I never had siblings. I know, but I got tested." Thomas froze. "You what?" "While you were unconscious. I asked them to run my markers against yours, just in case." Thomas felt a surge of anger. "Don't be stupid, Leo. I found you on a porch. We aren't related. The odds of us being a match are 1 in a million. I know, but I had to try." "Why?" "After what I said to you, after how I treated you, because you're my dad. It doesn't matter how you found me. You're the one who was there." Thomas looked away. He couldn't handle the kindness. It burned. The door opened. Dr. Aris walked in. He was a tall man with gray hair and a serious face. He was holding a clipboard. He looked at Thomas. Then he looked at Leo. He had a strange expression on his face. Not the look of a doctor delivering bad news, but the look of a man who had just seen a ghost. "We have the results. Tell him he's not a match so we can move on." "Actually, he is a match." Thomas blinked. "What? He's a perfect match, Mr. Thorne. 6 out of 6 antigens." Thomas looked at Leo. Leo looked just as shocked. That's a miracle. It's extremely rare for unrelated individuals." "Mr. Thorne, can I speak to you privately?" "No." "Leo stays. If he's giving me an organ, he stays." The doctor hesitated. "Mr. Thorne, we ran a standard DNA confirmation. It's protocol for live donors to ensure compatibility and rule out certain diseases. And the results show that you and Leo are not unrelated." The room went dead silent. The beeping of the monitor seemed to speed up. "What are you talking about?" "Leo is your son, Mr. Thorne, biologically. 99.9% probability." Thomas felt the floor drop out from under him. "That's impossible. I found him. On my doorstep. I didn't." He looked at Leo. Leo was staring at him. His mouth was open. "Dad." Thomas's mind raced. He went back 20 years, the women, the parties, the life he lived before he became a hermit. There were many, too many to remember names, but there was one he hadn't forgotten. Elena. Elena wasn't like the others. She wasn't a socialite. She wasn't looking for a husband. She was an artist. She lived in a loft in Brooklyn that smelled like turpentine and jasmine. They had met at a gallery opening. He bought her painting. She laughed at his tie for 3 months. Thomas Thorne was in love, real, terrifying love. He thought about leaving the company. He thought about running away with her to Paris. But then the merger happened, the deal of the century. It required his full attention. It required him to be ruthless. Elena was a distraction, so he broke it off. He did it over dinner. He gave her a diamond bracelet as a parting gift. She left the bracelet on the table. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him with those dark, stormy eyes and said, "One day, Thomas, you're going to realize that money can't hug you back." And then she walked out. He never saw her again. 8 months later, the baby appeared on his porch. Thomas looked at Leo, really looked at him. He looked at the shape of his nose, the way his hair curled at the ears. He looked at his hands, long fingers, piano player fingers, artist fingers. "Leo, give me your necklace." Leo touched his chest. The silver locket he always wore. He had arrived with it. It was tucked into the blanket that night 20 years ago. Thomas had never let him open it. He told him it was rusted shut. He told him it was better not to look at the past, but Leo had worn it every day. Leo unclasped the chain. He handed it to Thomas. Thomas took it. His thumb rubbed the tarnished silver. He remembered seeing this locket on Alina's neck. He forced his fingernail into the groove. It wasn't rusted shut. It popped open. Inside, there was a tiny, folded photo. Thomas unfolded it with trembling fingers. It was a photo of him and Alina. They were laughing. He wasn't. Wearing a suit, he looked happy. And on the back, in handwriting he recognized instantly, were 3 words: "He needs you." Thomas started to cry. He didn't just tear up. He broke, great racking sobs that shook the hospital bed. He covered his face with his hands. "She came back. She brought you to me." "Who?" "Your mother, Alina. She must have been sick or dying. She knew she couldn't take care of you. So she brought you to the only person she knew could protect you, even though I broke her heart." Thomas grabbed Leo's hand. He squeezed it so hard his knuckles turned white. "I thought you were a stranger. I treated you like a stranger. I pushed you away because I was afraid to love something that wasn't mine. But you were mine. You were always mine." Leo had tears running down his face too, but he didn't pull away. He did the one thing Thomas had never taught him to do. He leaned forward and hugged his father. He held the man who had been cold to him for 20 years. "It doesn't matter, Dad. We're here now. The surgery took 8 hours. It was complicated, risky, but they both made it through. Recovery was slow." Thomas spent a lot of time looking out the window of his hospital room. He thought about the wasted years. The dinners spent in silence, the concerts he missed, the "I love yous" he never said. He couldn't get that time back, but he still had time left. 6 weeks later, Thomas was discharged. He didn't go back to the office. He called the board of directors from the car. He resigned, effective immediately. He told them to promote the CFO. He told them he didn't care about the stock price. When the car pulled up to the estate, it was raining again, just like that night 20 years ago. Thomas got out. He moved slower now. He leaned on a cane. Leo was there, helping him up the steps. They stopped on the porch, right on the spot where the basket had been. Thomas looked out at the rain. He took a deep breath. The air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. He turned to Leo. "I'm selling the company. You can't do that. It's your life." "No, it was my distraction. This is my life." He pulled a set of keys from his pocket. "There's a studio in the city, a loft in Brooklyn. I bought it last week. It has north-facing windows, good light for painting. Dad, take them. Go be who you are, Leo, not who I wanted you to be." "But what about you? What will you do?" Thomas smiled. It was the first time in 20 years that his smile reached his eyes. "I have a lot of art history to catch up on. I was hoping I could hire a private tutor. I'm expensive. I can afford it." He put his arm around his son. They stood there for a long time, watching the storm, but Thomas wasn't cold anymore. The ice around his heart had finally melted, and for the first time in his life, the richest man in New York realized he had finally found the only thing worth keeping. He hadn't just found a son on his doorstep, he had found himself. And as the rain turned to a soft drizzle, Thomas Thorne knew one thing for sure. Alina was right. Money can't hug you back, but a son. A son can save your life, in ways that science never could. Thomas closed his eyes and listened to the rain, and for the first time, it sounded like music.